Amazon is one of the biggest employers in the world, and they just announced that they are cutting jobs. And the thing about Amazon is they're always ahead of the curve. So we're going to discuss what this means for the broader economy.
Yeah, now some of this might be seasonal, of course, but, because Amazon does load up, of course, for the holidays. I get it. But, Jerry, maybe we can pull up this jobs report because I think a lot of people might have seen this. If you haven't seen this, this is recent in the Wall Street Journal. But take a look at this chart here. Obviously, job openings went up. And then obviously COVID, and then went down, and now we're at a really, really an all-time low, so a post-COVID low. But really what I want you to focus on is the information at the bottom. So the new data, of course, had about 6.5 million open positions in December. Now the real issue, of course, is that that's 1 million fewer jobs than a year earlier. So that's good, Jerry. Thank you. So what we have here is we have job openings obviously going up, right? And so that's tough. And then at the same time, we got the new administration, which is what we're going to talk about. The housing policies, right? And can people kind of get into these hard assets right now?
Yeah, so I think it's important because the fact that Amazon is pulling back, and we're going to discuss why that is, but one of the things that a lot of companies right now are not focusing on expansion. They're focusing on more preservation, cutting back. Part of that's due to AI. Part of that is just due to the fact that expansion is expensive right now. Labor is expensive, borrowing's expensive, everything's expensive. So if they're not feeling like they can make money through all of that, then they're going to instead cut back.
Well, it hit what happens, guys, as you know, it hits Main Street first, right? And I would arguably, I would say that's really where they're focusing mostly, and they should. These food costs, fuel costs, all that kind of stuff hits very, very hard. And then of course, obviously that's an inflation, but then it moves into corporate America, Wall Street, which of course Main Street doesn't really care about, but if you own a company, you're a stockholder or whatever, you're trying to be a fiduciary for these entities, which I know you guys all hate. A lot of people hate these, but they have to figure out how to be profitable. And so inflation is creeping in to all of this stuff. And so they're using tech. They're using all these kinds of things to try to figure out how to counterbalance that. Because as Main Street gets wounded, let's say, from these higher costs, so does Wall Street. And so that is pretty much, the talk kind of behind in the boardrooms is how do we reduce costs? I just had a call this morning about this exact thing. How do we keep our company size the way it is, so not laying off, but doubling growth? I mean, that's a fair question. I'm not laying anybody off, but how do we double our growth? And guess how we're doing it? We're doing it through tech. We're applying those at the property levels. We're applying those at the vendor levels. Certainly, we're applying those at the employee level. And even our CFO herself said, I think with good AI and good tech, we should be able to double the amount of properties that one, let's say, staff accountant can handle. So are they doing more work? No. Are they working more hours? No. We're just using, these kind of tools. And so we are personally, now obviously it hits the bottom line. And so I think that's really what people are focusing on is how do we grow our revenue? How do we expand our companies? How do we do that without having layoffs? And so that those job report, that number is reflective of that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that you have to account for is the fact that layoffs aren't rising quickly. It's kind of a slow churn. So it's not rapid right now. It's just companies are kind of, I think, choosing to not fill positions that leave a lot of them.
Well, that's what I mean. If we have an accountant that leaves, for example, on their own merit, let's say, we would look to first absorb that using tech, right? So, and so that's kind of what was happening. Is unfortunately, what I say, they go from the bay to the ocean. And the ocean right now is a little bit rough. Like when we're here in the job markets, it's rough. There's a lot more positions available than there were certainly not long ago.
Yeah. And I think the other part of this is one, we talked about higher cost of capital, right? So if they wanted to expand, that's going to cost them quite a bit of money. And businesses look at all this. And they also aren't sure what's going to happen with rates over the next few years. So how can you put together a 3 or 5 year expansion plan if you don't know what you're borrowing against? Well, and you don't know what your labor costs are going to be.
That's a heck of a point. And Jerry, let's pull up that credit card chart because I think this is an important thing. Now, I'm focusing for a moment on the, call it Main Street. Now, these are consumer loans. Obviously, the biggest piece of this are credit cards because the revolving loans in the commercial banks kind of did pull back a little bit here. So I would say this is predominantly credit card debt. Now, what's really most important to on this chart, guys, is this is 1 year. Really, really important to note that this is 1 year. So you look at credit card debt, it is at an all-time high. Now let's take a look at a longer period of time, Jerry. So let's take a look at that one. So this goes back to 2021, and we were monitoring this. And what does this tell? What should this tell you? If you looked at personal savings rates, you would see those going down, and you would see credit card debt going up. So obviously, we reported on this channel when credit card debt went up a couple of years ago, and then it dropped ironically a little bit, and now it's going up again. And I do want to mention that we're looking at rates in the 20s here. So when you have $1 trillion+ of credit card debt at over 20%, talk about an anchor. And so this is what Trump addressed this at Davos. He said this is an anchor. This specifically is he called it usury. There's usury laws against this. This specifically is taking people from being able to afford stuff, right? Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other things, but you can't deny that well over 20% of $1 trillion is a lot of money.
Yeah, and you have to really look at that consumer spending, right? Because that's the key to all of this. In 2020, people had more money to spend because they weren't going out, they weren't doing a lot. Now, life has gone back to normal. We have inflation. So a lot of that discretionary spending is no longer being spent on, places like Amazon. So obviously they're going to have to let people go, and obviously they're going to have to look at their profits. And we also have to really look into AI. So we touched on that, but I think a lot of businesses right now are saying, how can we have the same amount of production output with less employees? Because employees are expensive. It's not even just trying to save money from employees. Like a lot of states, you're having increased minimum wages, increased, time off, and, a lot of costs come from employees. And so businesses naturally, when they're looking at their expenses and they're trying to maintain their profits, are going to want to try to replace some people with AI. And we just went to a conference on this past weekend, and there's a lot going on as far as replacing people with AI. You can't replace whole jobs yet, but you can make where you maybe needed 2 people to do a job down to 1 because AI can assist on some of the more menial tasks.
Yeah, and you guys know this is the worst it's going to be. I just really want to point that out. Like even ChatGPT has already been replaced, with better technology. And it's only been around for a little over 2 years, 3 years. So it's moving so fast, and so there are what we call Luddites, that don't do anything. But there are people that are really embracing this, and there are people that are slowly embracing it. And in our company, everybody, and this is really the reality of things, they happen slowly and then they happen very fast, all at once. And so if like my accounting department is very busy, like they're busy, they don't have a lot of excess capacity to look at new technology. That's just the truth. Okay, so it takes leadership to say, hey, let's take a look at this, and then it slowly makes its way in on their terms and obviously working together. But it takes years to do all this stuff. In addition to that, the industry itself is doing that. So just in our little company, we've got like 400 people now. We have legal, that's collapsed. We have accounting, that's collapsed. We have marketing, that's collapsed. And so you start to look at things that you used to be able to do, from copywriting to logos to graphic design to thumbnails for YouTube to whatever it might be. All that stuff it's moving very, very, very fast. And the one thing that I think you're going to need to do, especially if you're in some of these mid-level roles, is you need to embrace this technology and see how you can bring it. Because what you have is, if you have these, call it, I don't know, people that have been in the industry for 30, 40, 50 years, let's say, they're not on top of this stuff like the youngsters, so this is like a tale of two cities. You've got, and this is exactly what happened. Like my mom still reads the newspaper, if you can believe that. Okay. I bought her a bunch of computers. She never adapted ever, right? That's just what she is. There are people that do this with books. Now, you youngsters, you're looking at books and you're like, well, what are those old things sitting on the shelf? Well, that's the way it was. This is the exact same moment of time, where the people are embracing this technology, and some are implementing it in their companies, some are designing companies completely around it, and others aren't doing anything. And the ones that aren't doing anything are going to continue to struggle, in my opinion, because to Danille's point, back to the original. And by the way, Amazon leads the country in tech, guys, arguably, right? Leads the world, I should say. One of the leaders of the world in tech. I mean, they have full warehouses of robots, actually. So, we had a huge fulfillment plant in Tucson built right next to one of our properties, and they have a huge parking lot out front, and there's like 10 or 20 cars every day in this parking lot, right? It's all tech. So that's where this is headed.
And before we hop into how that's going to affect the Fed, here's a word from our paid sponsor, Monetary Metals.
And now a word from our paid sponsor. Normally, gold just sits there. You buy it, you store it, and it doesn't do anything unless the price goes up. Monetary Metals works on a different idea. Instead of gold sitting idle, it can be leased, much like a property or equipment, through structured agreements. Certain businesses actually need physical gold to operate. So rather than buying it outright, they lease it for a period of time and pay a fee for using it. Not from trading gold or predicting prices, but from gold being used productively through those leasing arrangements. Depending on structure and risk, some of these leases have historically paid yields, with figures reporting up to around 4%. If all this sounds confusing, that's normal. Most people have never been taught how gold leasing works. If you already own gold and are thinking about it and want clarity, the best step is to simply book a call with the Monetary Metals team. Monetary Metals is a paid sponsor. This is a sponsor promotion and not financial or investment advice. Gold leasing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Returns are not guaranteed. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. Review all program details and risk disclosures at monetary-metals.com. If you want to learn more, you can go to monetary-metals.com/Ken.
So, Trump has been saying he wants rates down, obviously, and a weaker economy is what's going to give that to him. So the biggest thing is with the Fed is they're looking at jobs numbers and they're looking at inflation. Jobs numbers have been fine over the past few years, so they've really focused on inflation. Now that jobs are starting to be unsteady, this could prompt rate cuts because the Fed does not want to see job numbers get worse. So it will be interesting next time they meet to see kind of what angle they're going at, especially now that Trump has his new guy in there.
Yeah, to be clear, though, the Fed has never hit their target, right? Mm-hmm. So their target on their website is 2%. Mm-hmm. That 2% of inflation, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's true they're under 3%. I get it. And it's one time they were at over 9, so in June of 22. And it's true that it's been bouncing around. So it's not out of control for sure, but they've never actually had it under 2 or at 2. Now, if you go back, there was a time that everybody forgets that they were well under 2. They were always between 1 and 2, and they were just fine, and they were managing unemployment just fine. Right now, to Danille's point, they're just under 3. And as we've now pointed out, we've got this unemployment potential issue, especially with the graph we just showed you. There's 1 million more openings than there were 1 year ago. So that I do agree with you is going to be a big deal, and especially with this new Fed chair, the Warsh, right?
Warsh, yep.
Warsh, yeah. So Warsh is going to come out. What they could do is they could move that 2% target, right? Which a lot of people say it should be moved. Now, what does that really mean? Like, you guys, you wrap your head around this. If the Fed's okay with 3% or 2% right now, but it's been over 3, if they're okay with 3, in 10 years, that means that whatever it is that you're doing, the costs are up 20 to 30%. That's what they mean. That's what it means. So if you're in cash,
Annually.
Yeah, annually. If you're in cash, that means your dollars, while they might still be the exact same number, like you might have 10 grand or 100 grand in there, it buys 20 to 30% less if the balance stays the same during a period of time. On the other side, if you have something that rises with inflation, like a hard asset, like real estate, not always, real estate has a lot of other factors, then you're going to see that appreciation, and I always use that analogy with my mom, who my mom and dad bought their house for under 11 grand in the 60s, and now it's worth over 700. And my mom's a hairdresser and my dad was in construction. Okay, so what happened? What happened was the slow moving inflation over a long period of time made that asset more. And so you got to make a decision here. Are you going to be heavy in cash or heavy in something that could potentially get hurt from inflation? Or are you going to invest in things that actually move with inflation? And it is your choice. And I think we're at this defining point now. We don't exactly know what the Fed's going to do. Obviously, my guess is, based on Trump's prior presidency, is that he's going to really push for lower rates, which is, of course,
he already is pushing for lower rates.
Yes, that's true. He already had Fannie and Freddie buy $100 billion each, and that brought rates down. I do want to point out something, on house prices that before we go too far. So house prices are still in the 400s. I think it's 405 when I took a look, 405,000. So if house prices are around 405,000, let's say, right now. Okay, thanks, Jerry, for pulling that up. Let's call it in 2022. Jerry, pull that up real quick. Let's pull up in 2022. You can see they kind of peaked. Now, what happened during that period of time? In the beginning of 2022, interest rates were 3.1, and at the end, they were around 7. So in 9 months, they more than doubled in 2022, and that's what we're battling now. We're battling interest rates. They were 3.1 in June of 2020, or in January of 2022. And then by June, they were around 5.7, and then toward a couple months later, they were in the 7s. Now they're starting to ratchet back down. And what's happened is you can kind of see the median price of homes have come down. The interesting thing that what happened during this period of time is that in June of 2022, we had 1.3 million homes listed unsold. And today we have 1.1. So I think that's really interesting, is we actually have less inventory here. 3-4 years later than we did back then. And we're still hovering around, call it 3 months of inventory. And so not a lot's changed. And so what will happen is interest rates, if they are driven down, what's going to happen is you're going to start to see these prices go back up again, just like they did in January of 22 up all the way to June of 22 when they started to peak.
I will say the one caveat to that is the job market, because buyers, right now, we're going to be talking about this on our podcast on Thursday, is 16% of deals in December fell out of contract.
Yeah. And by the way, that's double.
Yeah, that's over double what is normal. And I think part of that is a job uncertainty. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But one of the things is if somebody all of a sudden feels like their job's not stable, then they are hesitant to take on a mortgage.
And you can't blame them, by the way.
You can't blame them. And there's pros and cons, because after you lose your job, you definitely can't get the mortgage. So, there's pros and cons to it. But yes, exactly. So they don't want to be locked into this 30-year when they feel like there's job insecurity. So you're going to see that probably continue if we have, issues in the labor market. You're going to see more and more buyers being hesitant, especially first-time buyers.
That's a heck of a point. I think if you guys have ever been to like a really, really busy train station, like you hop on, hop off trains, no problem. Okay, that's what the job market's been kind of like. Mm-hmm. Literally, you can hop off and walk across the platform and then hop on another one, and you can end up somewhere else. That is historically what the job market's been like. Right now, there's a lot of people sitting on the platform waiting for the right train. And so that's really what that extra million people represents. Because they would, if they could, work.
But I will say that this is predominantly first-time home buyers, which only make up about 20% of the buying pool right now.
That's a
so
good point.
while this mattered more, back in like 2008, 2009. Now, you have that K economy that we talk about, where you have people doing really well and you have people, kind of paycheck to paycheck, working multiple jobs. If the first-time home buyer is only represented by 20% of the sales and everybody else is already in the market, so they're selling something to then buy something else, whether they're downsizing or upsizing, the labor market is not going to matter as much as it has in the past. It will affect things, but not to the same degree, because it's predominantly your first-time home buyers that are going to get affected by this.
And let me tell you one thing that will really, really be a game changer in 2026 for everyone. And that is, if rates go down, it's going to unlock so much home equity. It's going to be insane. Like what's going to happen is if rates go down, people are going to unlock, as you guys know, we had this incredible run and there's people sitting on a fair amount of equity, but they're also sitting in these 2 to 4% mortgages. Okay. They're not moving because their rate, their mortgage payment is so low. And so if we can get those rates down and not have a crash in the real estate market, it's going to unlock so much money. And where's that money going to go? It's going to flow into new housing, new construction, new cars, new electronics, new remodels, all that kind of stuff. It's going to open up so much. And that could be, albeit a very short win, but that I think will really could stimulate the economy in spite of this higher unemployment, because there's a lot of those people are sitting on, it's basically like they're sitting on a huge savings account.
Yeah, but you also have to think when times get tough and there is instability in the job market, lenders tighten as well, because they have to account for, is this person going to lose their job? Are we going to be able to get paid on this loan? So you might see where you have to put more down than in the past, where your credit has to be better than it was, where, they're just more hesitant to lend. And we did see this in 2008 and 2009. Now, I don't think it would be how it was then, but if you're a first-time home buyer, you do have to consider this, right? Right now, the economy is still good. You're still able to get a loan. You still have your job. So it is a good time to buy if you can, because if you wait till you get let go, or you wait and they tighten lending standards, then it's going to be harder for you to get into the housing market.
Yeah, let me give you another perspective on that too. I don't disagree with some of what you said, but I also understand that financial institutions are also greedy. Like, they don't make money unless they lend money. And so they're always bending to try to get people. I would have I could make an argument that the reason we have credit card debt going up so high, that those people are largely the most risky. because they're paying in the 20s. And so while you could be right, if the financial institutions really tighten their purse strings on lending and all that kind of stuff, it hurts their balance sheets. It hurts their stock price. It hurts their profitability. And so there has to be a flow of money. And so what typically happens when there's a lot of money unlocked is there's a competition for it. So if rates go down, for example, they're going to want to lock these in. They're going to want, because these people are going to come out of those properties with a tremendous amount of equity. Now, to your point, if they don't have a job and they don't have a steady stream of income, then of course they'll have a tougher time. But you and I both know, you don't, I don't have a paycheck. Do you have a paycheck? I don't have a paycheck. So we don't have paychecks, but yet we're still buying real estate, yet we're still owning real estate, and we figure it out. So, while we might not be the typical first-time home buyer, I will contend that the banks have just gone through this period of time where things are tight for them, and they could be looking at this run as a profitability run.
Yep. So I think with sellers, what sellers have to realize is if you're going to have less buyers, you're not going to be able to price as high. This isn't 2020, right? Like you can't just price at whatever you want and get a sale. And I think that depending on what happens over the next couple of months, if unemployment continues to go up, you're just going to have to understand you're going to have less of a buying pool. And you have to wrap your head around that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you go back to this K-shaped economy, which is exactly right. So, the proportionally, how many people are in the top end of the K, right? Mm-hmm. And how many are in the bottom? And that's a fair point. But I also think that, I looked this morning, there's only 1.1 million listings today. It's just went over 1 million. So that is low. I mean, that's 3 months of supply, and so that's historically not going to do much. And so I think, as you guys know, maybe in 2008, guess how many listings? We had 4 million.
Right.
Like you have 4 million. So you have 4 times, right? More. Or is it 400 times, I guess? So you get the point, from 1 million to 4 million. So that's when you start to see the problem. But, we're so far from that, in my opinion. You could add another 500,000 homes and it would be good. It would create stress, a little bit of stress. What I mean by that is that there needs to always be a little bit of resistance between the seller and the buyer. And you just told me you went and showed some houses this weekend, and there was a listing that was there for 5 days, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely resistance right now. It's a buyer's market.
That's not resistance. 5 days is nothing.
Well, that one was priced well. There's some that have been listed for 120 days.
That's my point, though. Like 5 days? Come on.
But they priced it cheap. I mean, if you price it cheap, it's always going to sell. I mean, average days on market right now are in the 70s, I believe.
We'll see.
But
5 days is not a buyer's market.
If you price it cheap enough, it's always going to sell. But anyway, so I wanted to get into, how this is a broader portion of the economy. So there is a K-shaped economy going on right now, and there's a lot of people that are still paying cash. I work with a ton of people that are still buying their kids' homes with cash, buying investment properties with cash. And the truth is if the rates start to go down, you do have people sitting on the sidelines. And that's one of the reasons this is different than 2008, because this is affecting people in the job market. There's a lot of people in cash that this is not affecting. So if investors are kind of out right now on a lot of the real estate market because the returns aren't good, if interest rates go down significantly, you're going to see investors come back in. And that's also going to push up. That's going to push up the prices more than first-time home buyers and home buyers coming in. It's going to be the investors if the rates go down.
Well, investors will be a piece of that. I mean, you and I were bantering over that this weekend. You're looking at, I don't know how many deals, I looked at your sheet. You had like 20
Yeah.
on there that you were trying to figure out a way, and you're as you should, you're looking at cash flow, right? So how much you buy, pay for, how much you put debt, and then how much equity you have, and then what's your cash flow, and then you back into your cash on cash return. You were having a heck of a time, and you didn't find very many.
Yeah.
Based on the interest rates today.
Yeah, it's based on the interest rates, not as much on the prices.
Right.
Yes.
So once the interest rates go down, to your point, cash flow goes up, and then you start this asset bubble. Exactly what happened in January of 2022. This is my point. And so when rates were 3.1, and prior to that in 2021, what pushes house prices up are low interest rates, and that. We've already seen this, guys. And then they went all the way up, and now they've corrected down to 405. The difference is that the reason we're not seeing any kind of a house crash, the reason why I still believe it's a little bit of a seller's market is, not in every market, by the way, guys. Of course, there's markets that are in bad shape. But from a U.S. standpoint, 405 average home price is still shows resistance. And at these higher rates. And by the way, don't forget, we had over a year of rate cuts, and we're still over 400, on the price of a single family house.
And I did want to discuss the boardroom that you're doing on March 13th, if you want to quickly explain what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is actually going to be fun. I don't know exactly how many people have signed up for this yet, but I should, but I don't. But I'm doing a 1 day, literally mastermind at my office for 19 people, I believe it is. And it's going to be really, really fun. It's in March, and these are people that want to scale, that go, a lot of them I've spoken to already, own a lot of multifamily. So it's very, very exciting for me to be able to sit around and talk to people what's going on all over the country. Everybody's flying in. We're going to have a whole day of it, and I'm very, very excited.
And who is this for?
This is for KenMcElroy.com.
No, I know, but what kind of person is this for?
Oh, got it. These are for people that want to scale. These are people that want to scale their businesses, right? So let's say they own a whole bunch of single families, or maybe they own a bunch of multifamilies, and they want to figure out exactly how did I get up over 10,000 units, and how do we run our development company, our construction company, our property management company. We're going to bring all those folks into the room. And, you'll be able to meet my team, and I'm basically going to lift the hood up and show you exactly how I do it. So it's exciting.
Yep. Just go to mccompanies.com/boardroom. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Cheers, guys.